Hello and welcome to Know This Live. I'm Zinclea Samoa. Joining me today is Travon Free, comedian, actor, writer, and director of the new film Two Distant Strangers. The short film follows a young Black man caught in a recurring nightmare where he is killed by the police. NowThis is a producer of the film. Travon, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for watching the film.
Yeah, and it's not lost on me that we've seen a lot of different films that depict violence against Black bodies, right? I think about Fruitvale Station, I think about The Hate You Give. So why make another?
This one felt like an opportunity to demonstrate to people what it feels like to live in the cycle of repetition of seeing the stories of Black people being killed repeatedly by the police. And, while movies like The Hate You Give and the other movies that people have made involving police brutality or any of that subject matter are great for what they do and the stories they tell. The idea behind this was to create a very specific feeling and to communicate a very specific phenomenon that Black people uniquely experience, which is the cyclical trauma of experiencing the death of people who look like us and what emotions and physicality we go through in seeing those stories almost weekly sometimes, and how by the time you're finished processing one of them, there's another one and another one. And so this was to speak to the people who really don't understand what it feels like to experience that feeling. And so the idea was to show people, this is what I feel like when I see Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd stories, back to back to back, and I have to internalize the trauma of those experiences, and also what it feels like to feel like it might be you one day. And so it was a piece to give people a window into my soul or our souls, people who identify with it, and to speak to the hope and resolve that we have as Black people to continue to fight to end the cycle and to break that cycle. And I think of this as something people like us, Black people who uniquely experience this, can show to their non-Black friends, their white friends, and say, this is a little bit. This is an example of what it feels like. When you watch this, that feeling you feel, that discomfort, that pain that you feel for 29 minutes is my life.
Yeah, and on that, you talk about cyclical trauma and the traumas that so many Black people and Black bodies, Black and brown bodies go through. Um, Obviously, witnessing Black death is traumatic for anyone, but especially people of color and especially Black people. So, who is your intended audience, given how graphic the film at times can be?
Yeah, I mean, I think the intended audience for this is non-Black people, white people, anyone who doesn't understand, you know, firsthand what our experiences are as Black people in America, or even Black people in the United Kingdom who experience this. There's people around the world who are traumatized in this nature, and it's an artistic piece, and I don't need to tell Black people what it's like to experience this. They know. And so, this is to say to the world at large, and to especially white people in America, this is what it's like to be us, and this is how awful it feels, every day to see these stories and also carry this baggage and this trauma around with us, and this fear of not knowing that I could simply just be walking home and end up on the wrong side of a police officer's gun. And, sometimes telling people and trying to have a conversation with people isn't enough. And that's the beauty of art. We get to take something and use it to demonstrate and communicate a feeling that can't necessarily always be communicated through words. And so the visual medium and the way that, films play on our emotions is a big part of why I think it was important for me to tell this particular story this way.
And obviously, this is quite different from other work that you've done before. As referenced, you're a comedian and a writer. We know you've done work for Comedy Central's The Daily Show and Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. So, why the sudden change, and how did your creative process change?
I've been working in scripted television and film for the last couple of years, whether it's like writing movies for studios or punching up movies for studios or, writing for scripted shows like Black Monday. And so the journey to long form storytelling was always going to be where I was headed. It was always what I wanted to do. And so, I started in late night in that Daily Show, and that was a place I really wanted to be. It was a show I really wanted to work for, and I was lucky enough for that to be my first job. And um, but that was to me that was the beginning. I got an education there in how to work really fast, write really fast, and be productive in a way that was still of a high standard. And taking that into the scripted world made me, more effective and actually like cater to my growing beyond uh, my position in those shows much quicker. And so this being an opportunity to write and direct something that I could demonstrate to, the people who I've been already working for and working with and the world at large that like, I can do these things and do them well. It was an opportunity to do that and also make a statement, which is pretty much, the the reason why I take the jobs that I've taken, which is to write something or work on something that is also saying something beyond just being entertaining. And that's kind of the thing that guides my choosing of projects and TV shows and things of that nature. So it was more like a, you know, almost like a coming out piece of like, hey, I know I'm working my way into directing things and, writing expensive big budget features, but let me show you in this really punchy half hour, what you get if you, hire me to do anything, basically.
Yeah, and there was a lot of nuance in the film. I think a lot of nods to Black history and culture. We saw a book by James Baldwin on the table just in the first few scenes. Why did you incorporate so much Black history and that kind of nuance in a story that has so much to do with present day issues?
It's funny, like James is my favorite, probably my favorite author, and Carter's character actually has a line about James Baldwin that we cut from the movie. Um, and but if you also
What
in the
was it?
song, uh, when uh, when Merck says to him, you really got away with words, kid, and Carter's response was, well, I read a lot of James Baldwin, um, and I think there was more to it, but we cut it so long ago I can't remember the exact line, but it was that plus maybe something else, and so it was kind of in informing his knowledge and awareness of his blackness and like and its place in history and how it connects to now. And so for me it was, I read a lot of James Baldwin, and uh, the things he talks about are still so relevant today. And it was such a bridge between the past and the present for me and for him as a character to be grounded in the understanding of himself and the place that he lives in and the trauma that he experiences. And so all of the stuff in the film like that is completely, for that reason, and to try to connect the past to the present and to figure out a way to, you know, stop it, to get us to a place where, you can't read a James Baldwin quote and it still applies in 2021.
What is your so what? What do you hope not just audiences take away, but what do you want the lasting impact of this film to be, whether it be policy, mind change, what have you?
I mean, I would. I mean, it would be incredible to know that something that I wrote and created would affect policy on that level. But I hope for this film that it becomes something that not only informs people about what it feels like to be us, but it's something that can create the conversations necessary to the point where we don't have to make a film like this anymore. And that it's something that we can look back on and think about and remember a period of time where people felt the need to tell that particular type of story because of what they were experiencing in that moment at that particular time. And so I'm hoping that beyond just screening the film and wherever it ends up distribution wise, that, it becomes an education piece. It becomes, a museum piece. All the, like, these are all things that I've been approached for in terms of using the film for. And so people really feel like there's an educational element to it. And even in speaking with the Congressional Black Caucus members, they see such a strong educational component to it. And and I couldn't be happier about them wanting to use it to educate people, to talk to young people, to talk to police officers, to just create the conversation that can help push us forward away from the things that are happening in the movie. And ultimately, I think if anything happens, if we move forward 5 feet from where we started when I wrote it, then I think that's a positive. Like, that's a gain for us.
Well, thank you, Travon, for all of your work and your insights. For those tuning in, you can watch Two Distant Strangers soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Again, this has been Zincle Asamwal with Know This Live. We'll see you next time.